done all, or I wouldn't do all the silly stuff that I do. You know, the people like it or not is, you know, it's their choice.
At 62, Eddie finally dropped a bombshell. A secret list he'd kept buried for years. A blacklist of 6 legendary guitarists everyone thought he admired. But deep down, he couldn't stand them. These weren't random names off a playlist. These were the men who helped shape his entire sound. They inspired him, jammed with him, and even pushed him to greatness. But in return, some of them betrayed, ignored, or flat out disrespected him in ways that left lasting scars. And once that secret list came to light, the rock scene completely lost it. Fans couldn't believe who made the cut. So let's jump right into it. Eric Clapton, the legend who broke Eddie's heart in ways no one saw coming. The first name on Eddie Van Halen's hidden hate list was a total shocker. Eric Clapton. Yes, that Clapton. The guitar god Eddie once idolized so much, he literally wore out his old Cream records from replaying them non-stop. Friends from back in the day said you couldn't walk into Eddie's room without hearing Crossroads blasting so loud the walls were shaking. Eddie didn't just look up to Clapton, he studied him. Every lick, every solo, every note was like scripture to him. Clapton was the blueprint for everything Eddie dreamed of being. But in 1980, that admiration shattered with one brutal interview. When Clapton was asked about Eddie's playing, he could have just said something kind or neutral. Instead, he dropped a line that hit Eddie straight in the chest like a punch. "He's very good technically, but I don't hear much soul." That one sentence crushed Eddie. People who were with him said his face just fell. No anger, no yelling, just quiet heartbreak. He told friends, "I learned everything from him." And he says that? That wound didn't fade fast. It stuck. But the real pain came later. Backstage in Los Angeles when Eddie finally got to meet his hero face to face. He was nervous but excited, like a kid meeting Santa for the first time. Yet the moment should have been magical. It wasn't. Clapton barely looked up. No smile, no warmth. Just cold glances at his watch, like he couldn't wait to leave. When Eddie walked away, he muttered, "I think he just wanted it to end." That single moment broke something inside him. The man he'd worshipped his whole life suddenly felt small, distant, almost heartless. Years later, when he finally opened up about it, Eddie said quietly, "I loved the myth more than the man." That line said it all. Clapton sat at the very top of Eddie's secret blacklist, not because of some loud fight or ego war, but because that disappointment cut deeper than anything else. And next up, the icy tension that never thawed, Ritchie Blackmore. Eddie could never forgive Ritchie Blackmore, and the craziest part, Ritchie didn't even have to say one word. The first time they crossed paths, the air turned cold enough to freeze the room. Eddie walked in buzzing with excitement, ready to meet another guitar legend he'd always admired. But the moment his eyes met Ritchie's, everything changed. Blackmore just stood there, staring at Eddie with this blank, icy glare that screamed, "You're not welcome here." Eddie talked about that moment years later, still sounding stunned. "He just stared at me. Didn't say hi, nothing," he said. And that cold silence cut deeper than any insult ever could. Eddie was the kind of guy who lit up every room he walked into, always open, friendly, and full of energy. But Blackmore gave him nothing. No nod, no handshake, no respect. It was like a professional slap in the face, right there in front of everyone. And it didn't stop there. At a late 70s festival, one of the techs, just trying to be nice, mentioned that Blackmore and Eddie should talk guitar tone sometime. But Blackmore didn't even pretend to care. He turned away, voice low but sharp as a blade, and said, "Not now. I don't have time for that kid." Eddie heard it. Everyone heard it. The humiliation hung in the air like thick fog. You could practically feel it sticking to him. And just when it seemed like it couldn't get any worse, Blackmore threw another jab, this time in the press. When asked by a magazine what he thought of Eddie's wild, game-changing guitar style, Blackmore just shrugged and said, "He's a fine player, but too many notes." That wasn't a critique, that was a straight-up dismissal. The kind of comment that says, "Stay in your lane, kid." From that day on, whenever someone mentioned Blackmore's name, Eddie's tone changed instantly. The teenage admiration was gone, replaced by something cold and quiet, a bitterness that never left him. Years later, Eddie summed it up perfectly, saying, "Some people give you the shaft with their eyes." Then he added, "Blackmore didn't just give it, he perfected it." And that brings us to the next name on the list, Joe Perry, the rock star who acted like Eddie didn't even exist. So what really went down between Eddie Van Halen and Joe Perry? Even before they spoke a single word, the tension was already there. When Van Halen joined the 1978 tour alongside Aerosmith, one of the very bands that fired up Eddie's dreams as a kid, he was thrilled. But backstage, the vibe was ice cold. Every time Eddie crossed paths with Joe Perry in the hallway, Perry just walked right by. No glance, no hello, nothing. It was like Eddie was invisible. And Eddie didn't hide how that felt. He said straight up, "Joe Perry would just give me the shaft with his eyes." That silent treatment said it all, and it stung way more than any harsh words could. No "hey man," no nod, not even a quick smile. Eddie didn't need praise or ego strokes, just a simple sign of respect. But Joe Perry chose silence, and he wielded it like a weapon. The coldest moment came one night after sound check. Eddie, curious about the Gibson Joe was holding, walked over with his trademark friendly grin, ready to chat guitars like two rock brothers. But before Eddie could even say a word, Perry lifted his hand without turning his head and motioned, "Don't talk." Then he just kept on chatting with someone else like Eddie wasn't even standing there. Eddie stood frozen for a moment, humiliated, speechless, and burning inside. Later, he told a friend, "It was like I didn't even exist." That single brush-off from Joe Perry stuck with him for life. Years later, Perry finally tried to make things right, calling Eddie a genius. But by then, it didn't matter. The wound was already carved deep. That silence, that cold disregard, never left Eddie's mind. With Joe Perry, the quiet was louder than any insult could ever be. And next on that infamous blacklist, Randy Rhoads, the rival who hit Eddie where it hurt the most. The clash between Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads didn't simmer. It exploded. The moment Randy's name started showing up next to Eddie's in magazines, the tension was instant. Eddie had just turned the entire rock guitar world upside down with his sound, and suddenly, here came this young, classically trained prodigy being crowned the next Eddie Van Halen. That label cut deep. Eddie didn't even try to hide how much it got under his skin. In one interview, his tone was sharp as a blade. He said, "He learned everything from me." To Eddie, it felt like the industry was snatching his throne and handing it to a newcomer who hadn't earned it yet. And even though Randy wasn't out to copy him, the press wouldn't let it go. Every magazine, every radio host, every fan debate turned it into a never-ending duel, Eddie versus Randy, the truth. Their styles couldn't have been more different. Eddie was pure wild energy, instinct, chaos, and fire. Randy, on the other hand, was technical, structured, and polished with that classical training. But the media kept forcing them into the same ring, hyping it up as some kind of guitar war for the crown. Then came the prank that crossed the line and turned rivalry into real hatred. During a tour with Ozzy Osbourne, one of Randy's techs thought it'd be funny to tape a tiny picture of Eddie's face under Randy's wah pedal. So every time Randy stepped down, he was literally stomping on Eddie's face. Randy thought it was hilarious and left it there. That joke spread fast backstage, too fast. And when word reached Eddie, something inside him snapped. Publicly, he laughed it off like it didn't faze him, but privately, it ate him alive. That stunt wasn't just a prank. It was a line that should have never been crossed. To Eddie, it wasn't about competition anymore. It was about respect. And Ozzy didn't help things either. He later said that Randy didn't have a nice thing to say about Eddie, and that only made the rift worse. The whole situation turned toxic fast. Eddie, the man who'd inspired a generation, suddenly felt boxed in, undervalued and overshadowed by a kid who should have been thanking him, not mocking him. But here's the thing. Randy was struggling too. He was crushed by the endless comparisons. Both he and Eddie were tired of being pitted against each other like gladiators. Deep down, they both knew how insanely talented the other was, but pride kept their mouths shut. Even after Randy's tragic passing, that rivalry didn't fade away. It haunted Eddie. Randy became the one rival he could never escape, even in death. His shadow lingered, a constant reminder of what happens when admiration turns into resentment. And just when you thought Eddie's list couldn't get any more shocking, here comes Tom Schultz, the mastermind from Boston, the engineer who crossed Eddie's line in front of thousands. Moments later, Tom Schultz stepped onto the stage for Boston's set, and what he played made Eddie's jaw drop. His solo sounded almost identical to Eddie's. Same phrasing, same fire, same everything. Eddie froze in disbelief, staring from the side of the stage like, did he really just do that? After the show, Eddie didn't waste a second. He walked straight up to Schultz, no hesitation, no smile, and asked point blank, "Why'd you play my solo out there? Why would you take something that personal?" Schultz didn't even blink. He just shrugged and said, "It sounded good, like it was no big deal," then turned and walked away as if it meant nothing. That moment lit a fire inside Eddie. It wasn't just about the copying, it was the arrogance behind it. The way Schultz brushed him off, like Eddie's music, his soul, was just another riff to borrow. He didn't acknowledge the tension, didn't treat Eddie like an equal, didn't even show basic respect. Schultz acted like he was above it all, and that made it sting even worse. And just when things could have cooled down, another moment sealed the grudge for good. At a later show where both bands played, Eddie tried to bury the hatchet. He gave Schultz a polite nod backstage, a peace offering in silence. But Schultz? He didn't nod back. He didn't even slow down. Crew members swore they saw him deliberately shift his eyes away, refusing to even look at Eddie. That was the final straw. Eddie could handle rivalry. He respected competition. But disrespect? That was unforgivable. Schultz didn't just borrow a solo. He ignored the man who created it. And that's why he earned his permanent spot on Eddie's secret blacklist. Not because of the music, but because he couldn't even look him in the eye while stealing the sound that made him famous. And next up, the veteran who pushed Eddie past his breaking point, Rick Derringer. Rick Derringer holds a title no guitarist should ever want. He's the only musician Eddie Van Halen ever kicked off a tour. And that fact alone says everything about how bad things got and how fast it happened. There was no slow build-up, no quiet resentment. This feud exploded. What makes it even wilder? Eddie actually liked Rick at first. He respected him, admired his work, and thought they'd click instantly. But that respect turned to tension, and tension turned to open hostility in record time. The line was crossed so fast, Eddie didn't even think twice. He kicked Derringer off the tour on the spot. Eddie had grown up playing some of Rick Derringer's old licks, even admiring that slick, confident swagger he had on stage. But once they hit the road together, things went south quick. The breaking point came during a live show in '78. Eddie had just finished one of his mind-blowing solos, the kind that left the crowd hypnotized and roaring for more. It was Eddie's solo, note for note, played right in front of the same crowd that had just cheered him minutes earlier. Eddie stood off stage watching, eyes locked, jaw tight, and that look on his face said it all. He wasn't flattered, he was furious. It didn't feel like a tribute. It felt like theft. After the show, Eddie pulled Rick Derringer aside and kept it real. He told him straight, "I don't care if people use tapping, but copying my melody? That's different." Eddie even reminded him, "I looked up to you, man," hoping to appeal to some sense of mutual respect between two pros. But Derringer just shrugged it off like it was nothing. He mumbled something vague about just giving the crowd what they liked, then walked away without another word. That careless attitude hit Eddie hard. But the next night, Derringer took it even further. He walked back on stage grinning and did the exact same thing. Same melody, same phrasing, same finish. And to top it off, he closed his set with "You Really Got Me," the Van Halen song that had already become their signature anthem. That was the final straw. Eddie didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just made the call, cold and clear. He told the band and crew straight up, "Derringer is not opening for us anymore. No debate, no warning, no second chances." Rick Derringer had crossed the line not once but twice, and Eddie slammed that door shut for good. So now that the 6 names from Eddie Van Halen's secret blacklist are finally out in the open, let's recap the legends who made the cut. Eric Clapton, Ritchie Blackmore, Joe Perry, Randy Rhoads, Tom Schultz, and Rick Derringer. Which one shocked you the most? These weren't just random names, these were giants. Icons Eddie once admired, men who helped shape his sound before their words and actions cut too deep. Behind every smile, every riff, there was a story. And for Eddie, these 6 left scars that never healed. So tell us, which name hit you hardest? Which story do you think hurt Eddie the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading every single one. And if you're loving these behind-the-scenes rock stories that peel back the curtain on music's biggest legends, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Smash that bell icon so you never miss what's coming next, because the next revelation about Eddie Van Halen might just blow your mind even more.